good morning, or good afternoon, wherever in the world you may be. Hello. Welcome to Source Magic Highlights. We're back after a couple of weeks off. I missed you. As you can see, I'm not here alone today. So in just a moment, I will introduce, but we'll give everybody just a minute to come in. If you are here watching the replay, give a little hashtag replay so I know you were here and I can say hello. And hi, Anne. Good morning. So Darla just ran to get her earbuds. We got a little echoing action going on, so we're going to try to minimize that. So good morning and welcome to this conversation. Today we're going to be talking about your spiritual advantage, which is a really rich and juicy topic that I'm excited to dive into. So first of all, I'll start by acknowledging that, yes, I'm not here alone today. As you can see, I have some guests here with me, one of which, of course, you guys will recognize, Darla. Good morning. Thank you for joining us for this conversation.
Good morning.
And then a face that you might not be quite as familiar with yet, but you certainly will be, is Certified Source Leader and the latest addition to Source's coaching team, Manda Stack.
Hello, everybody.
So you get a chance to learn a little bit more about Manda as we go along today in this conversation. But I want to just first kick us off by talking about the spiritual advantage and what that even means. So I told Darla, hey, Manda and I want to have this conversation about your spiritual advantage. And Darla, you actually said, you almost named the quiz that, which I had a little like, it's fantastic, right? So I wanted to start with that. Like, what does your spiritual advantage even mean to you? And how does that apply to our work? So let's start there and we can dive in.
So who do you want?
You.
You want me to start? All right. So for me, first of all, I'm really, really excited for this conversation. I want to say big picture. I'm so excited to have Manda on our team. You will see her in the group as Manda Team Sourced. And I'm really delighted because our team is growing and because we're able to really provide potent coaching support for more people within our company. So I'm just celebrating that. So if everyone could take a minute and celebrate, because, to talk about the spiritual advantage, or really using your sourced magic, being able to trust the energy, right? Trust what you're getting and how you get it from source, from spirit, is an advantage with where we're going in the world. And so the more people that we can touch with this message, the more people who are able to stop, tune in, and say, this is what's true for me. This is what I feel called to, or this is what I'm picking up in this relationship. It elevates the consciousness on the planet. And, just this morning, I was talking with a friend of mine about this, about like, why don't we teach this in schools about energy? So it's great to know your spiritual advantage, which is how source works through you, how you feel the energetic of spirit. It's great to have that for business because it makes us more grounded, more potent, more spot on with the containers we're holding for our clients. And that's all great. But in life, it's priceless, right? So just as an example, in relationships. So this is something my friend was talking about. In relationship, I'm going to mute you, Ashlie. I think that's the source of so you have to mute and unmute. In relationship, she's had a couple relationships end and like really stressed about the relationship's ending and how to complete it and what did I do and what did they do and is this right and then it's like when really present to the energetic of it, it's simply energy. My energy was aligned here and now it's not aligned. And nobody has to be wrong. Nobody has to be stressed. Nobody has to react, right? It's this spiritual knowing of truth, that like personal truth, right? That dissipates all the stress about it. So when you speak to what's the spiritual advantage, Ashlie, I think about that. And then I think about as leaders, what it is to be able to hold that for a client. So I shared about this in our certification group. I'll share one more story and then I'll turn it back over. In our certification group, when I was going through my divorce last year, and I became aware of like kind of new information and the truth of what was going on in my relationship, immediately my very first thought was, who can hold space for this? Because I know, like, I don't know how anybody navigates life alone, but I know that's not for me, right? I know the power of potent coaching. So my very first thought was, who can hold space for this? And when I thought that, what I'm looking for is the qualities of what we call a sourced leader. So it's someone that's actually bringing that spiritual awareness and energetic awareness into the way they hold the container. Because there's lots of people that can show up and support you. There's lots of people that can show up and say, you're right and they're wrong and this is da-da-da. Or show up and say, you know, well, figure out how you can make this work, right? Here, like there's lots of different perspectives, but the perspective that's most healing, most soul nurturing and transformational is the one that comes in and says, there's no judgment. There's no figuring out, right? Because we could figure the situation out in a million ways. What's there is a space of non-judgment and a willingness to go together into the adventure of discovering the energetic truth of a situation. So when you're in your spiritual advantage as a leader, and this shows up in your marketing as well, but when you're living this, like you're the person that people think of when stuff happens and they're like, oh, who can hold space for this? So that's what I'm passionate about this morning.
Yeah. Well, you're bringing to the forefront the qualities and what makes a source leader different from any other kind of resource someone could go to. And I hear it like this broader perspective. And there's a couple of pieces that have to be present for someone to be able to bring that source leadership. And one is that they understand and are grounded in how transformation works. And they can appreciate that whatever you're looking at isn't so much about the content, but they can zoom out and back. So I'm thinking about a conversation I recently had with a client who, she stepped out in a more visible way in her audience and then immediately received a really harsh and hurtful criticism. And, we could have talked about the specifics of how it went down, but it's like immediately, okay, there's some energy pattern that's being shown here that's so ready to be transmuted for whatever wants to come next. So let's look at that. So we step back, we talk more about the energetics of it so that she can really see what's at play. And that makes all the difference. Naturally, when a new energy shows up, she'll know what actions to take or how to handle the situation, how she could have handled it differently. And it'll never occur in that same way again because of that. And it really is the difference in someone who can lead sourced. You have to unmute yourself now. I'll mute. So if we're echoing,
we have to spend so much time figuring out, how to respond to something when we're in our thinking mind. Whereas when we are really in our spiritual advantage, it becomes embodied. The lessons become embodied. The willingness to show up in the face of things becomes embodied. And so we never really need to attract that again because we get it, right? But when it's a mental strategy to combat whatever happens in life that we have to remember how to do, like I used to talk about getting those little wallet cards in going to corporate trainings, like assertiveness training. And it's like the 5 things to do when you have conflict, right? And it's like a little card you put in your wallet and then you have to remember. And I even then I was like, this makes no sense. Who's going to remember that? But when we're working with the energy, it's embodied. And it's so true, Ashlie, it'll never come that way again when you get it in the energy.
Which is the other piece of it. I know you talk about this in Shift the Field. It's like the prerequisite in a sense for being able to do that and be that kind of person is that you've got to be someone who's living and being in your own truth and doing your own, engaging in your own transformational work. It's part of what enables you to be present in such a way and hold the space in such a way that your magic is available and you can see what's there that maybe they can't see. I know we talk about that a lot in this group, this kind of like, are you living your message? Because it's so fundamentally vital to being able to show up and do the work and talk about it in a really confident way and understand it and experience it and all the things. So good morning, Julia.
And I would add, I love this conversation about spiritual advantage. I would add that a lot of our work as source leaders has to do, it's really courageous work because it has to do with things coming up and us facing it. The small t truths that we have been living kind of unconsciously, some old patterns that maybe have been set from childhood. I know that has been the case for me. And there are always more layers. There are always more layers to peel back and become aware of. And being in a source community like this is what really helped me fast track my own transformation. And why I'm just so honored and excited to be on the team and now supporting those who are on this transformational journey. So really glad to be here and honored for all of us brave souls and doing this work.
Manda, I want to highlight for people that you spent the bulk of your career as a pastor. And so this idea of the spiritual advantage, you have a really unique background and conversation about spirit that, most of us don't have. What's your take on how spirit wants to work with and through us?
Oh, beautiful question. Yes, the divine has been a part of my life since childhood, and I've wanted to serve and be a part of that and help others connect. And so for 23 years, I did that as an ordained minister and as a minister in the pastorate. And the way that I like this, it's a really simple image I have of the divine kind of being like the sun in our sky, just always shining, always there for us. Sometimes it seems cloudy, right? In the times in our lives when it feels like, where is the divine? Where is source? I'm feeling all alone here. But it's a filter. It's something that is clouding our way between. But that connection, that love that is shining on us from source is always there. And that's part of the reason that I want to support all of us in clearing away, whatever it is that may be standing in our way, whatever filters or clouds that may be covering up that full spiritual advantage that really is ours.
It's interesting. I love that analogy, Manda, of the sun and then the clouds or whatever's clearing. You know, here in Texas, we have a big storm right now, a lot. There's no sun. But these things that happen in our life is like that, right? Like a storm coming through. And the more we can know how to clear it and hold that connection, right? Hold the thread even as the storm is coming through, the more easeful life becomes. And as entrepreneurs, we know this is not an easy path, right? We have not signed up for the easy road here, guys, everybody who's listening. Because we are going to be called to energetically evolve over and over. And what that means is, I'm going to build off what you said, Manda, is being able to receive more and more of that sun. Like if we think about that analogy that the sun is coming in and it's fueling us, right? And Ashlie likes to use this idea of the Care Bear stare when we think about being really potent in our work, right? Like, and so it's coming out for Ashlie from her solar plexus. And by the way, I'm speaking to this specifically because we all experience our magic differently, right? Like I feel things in my body and I get like clicks, like, okay. And Ashlie is the Care Bear stare and people step in and it clears the clouds and the sun can come in. And it's like, there's different ways that we each work that helps our clients, but it really is, to Manda's point, having that connection with source is like receiving the sun. And sometimes, you know, people put things, like things have happened to us and things get clouded from interaction with other people. But mostly, you know, I lived in Denver for a while and I found the sun to be so intense because you're higher and closer to it and it's much more intense. And I'm thinking of when we clear all that away and we just can receive all that light and be a conduit for all that light, that can feel really intense when we're used to the clouds. And that's where having the support to say, hey, actually, like your life isn't falling apart and you're not bad and wrong. You're just afraid to receive more sun. And that makes perfect sense because maybe the people around you are living in certain clouds. And when you step into the sun, it's like, oh, are they going to feel bad? Am I going to leave them behind? Are they going to judge me? Like what's coming up?
That's an ever-growing expansion of our own capacity that we're at work on, to our ability to receive more sun. It's like at some point the threshold is like this, and then we grow and we expand and the threshold gets bigger and bigger. And that's part of the work, right? To just expand the threshold or the capacity for it. And even in the client I was referring to yesterday, it's partly that. It's so great you said that. It's like the little T truth, right? Is that if I shine, someone will get hurt. And it's like the capacity to be seen and to shine is small right now relative to the work she's meant to bring in. And so part of what she's at work on is expanding that so that she can really be in the fullness of it, because the work that wants to come through her requires that, or needs that, wants that, is pulling for that.
Yeah, when you say small relative to the work that wants to come in, I want everybody to hear this. The work that wants to come in, it should feel like, who am I to do this? Right? It should, we talked about this in our marketing for our Shift the Field live event coming up in a couple weeks. By the way, I think Ashley's going to put a link to it if anybody wants to come play with us for 3 days. It's going to be amazing. But you should be having thoughts, who am I to do this? Really, because one, that's how you have to call on your spiritual advantage. Because if you can't do it alone, who are you going to do it with? Source, and other sourced leaders, right? And we want it to call us to release more of the clouds. That's the journey.
I love it that you bring that in, because I think that that's something I understood or knew, but wasn't really articulating in that way. That when we're kind of going along and doing the things that we have a certain level of confidence we can do, which I did in my business for a while. And I think other people would have looked at it and thought, oh, like, you're brave, you're out there, because maybe for them it would have been, I was out there, I was holding retreats, I was being in it, and it was still falling within the world of what I felt relatively confident I could do. And when you start getting closer and closer to the edge, there is a part of you that has to call on help or surrender some aspect of whatever strengths your ego has developed to make it. It's like they're no longer sufficient. And there's space for something new to come in. And it's easy to think that point of surrender is a problem or a breakdown, and it's really lovely to hold it as good news. Ugh, like I am on the edge of something really magical here.
When you say surrender some strengths, I want people to really get that. The next level, like what one of my mentors used to say, what got you here won't get you there. And I'm going to outright say that my smarts got me a lot of places, and it is 100% the thing I've had to let go of the most to do this work. Like the smarter or more clever I am, the harder my job is now. Because the answer's not here, right? It's in my body, it's in my energy field. And when you need to trust the energy, which is your spiritual advantage, right? Getting this and holding it, putting it out, channeling it in whatever way it comes through you, that is your spiritual advantage. That is not coming through here, right? So this actually blocks that. Now, it's not that this isn't helpful. This can be helpful to ask questions of my soul. It can be helpful to take what my soul is giving me and put it in a framework like the quiz, right? My mind helps with things like that, creating frameworks that help our clients. But ultimately, like it can be a crutch, and it's not what I should be relying on, or it's not what works primarily, right? And so, yeah, Ashlie, when you say I have to surrender some strengths, it's like maybe for some people it's muscling through, right? Or like working harder than everybody else. We've had some of our clients in our Source Leader certification this year talk about this, like, well, I've always known if I can work harder than the next person, I'm going to be okay. And for me, I always know, well, if I can work smarter than the next person, I'm going to be okay. Right. But like, what is that about? Where is that coming from? That's not coming from letting the sun in. That's coming from like micromanaging the clouds. Manda, what's going on?
Yeah, I love that, micromanaging the clouds, because that's, when the clouds are out, that's where our attention goes. And so we want to we get into that fixing energy. So easy to fall into that. I can confess personally, absolutely. And the surrender is the scary piece, but it's the key. I have found over and over again, in little ways and big ways. Many of our clients take the big leap from their career into whatever, business that they want to build and create on their own. And that is a huge leap of faith, huge surrender to source, to that bigger vision that you're being called to.
Ashlie, where do you want to go next?
Well,
I know you have an agenda for us.
Yeah. Well, it's always our intention if we're showing up here to be, for this to be impactful for the people watching. We're here to serve this group and furthering this conversation. And so, I'm curious as you're listening to us, what's coming up for you. Thank you, Darla, for putting that. It's like, what questions do you have? And I would invite you to just take a little moment to pause and kind of self-reflect. To what degree are you leveraging your spiritual advantage? Are you present to it? Do you own it? Do you hold it as something that is valid and valuable? Are you making it visible? Right? So to what degree is that present for you? And are you leveraging it in your life and your business? Because just like Darla pointed out in the beginning, it's like, it's great for your business and it's priceless for your life. And we've been talking a lot, Darla, in Source Magic Business or in our monthly magic calls. We have such a great community about spending time really nurturing that and cultivating that. And so maybe that would be a great place to go. I'm kind of curious as to how you guys have personally worked to cultivate that and honor that in your life.
Yeah. So I'm assuming everybody here kind of knows this story, but they may not, which is how I came to develop the brand Sourced. Was very sourced. But it was several years ago, I was hosting an event and I made some decisions that made the expenses for the event higher than they might have otherwise been. And it was leading, maybe a month before the event, and I didn't have the number of attendees to make the event profitable. So it became apparent that I might be losing money. And then I realized that if I wasn't doing that event, my business was working really, really well. And so why did I do the event? Right? Like I literally came to this point of like, what am I doing here? And because everything else was all flowy and light. And then I added this thing that was hard. And when I looked at how I came to those decisions, I saw that they were coming from, not from the sun, right? But from how do I micromanage the clouds, right? How do I show up in a way that makes it feel a certain way? And I look like I have a real business and I'm successful. And it was coming from, we can use shorthand ego or default energy in our world. And so I could see some of the decisions I made that were coming from default. And then it made perfect sense that this just is going this way, right? Because we are getting back reflections of the energy we're putting out. At that moment when 4 weeks before the event, when I had to decide, am I going to hustle and scramble and make this work? Or am I going to just receive and accept this result and do it different next time, right? In that moment, I decided I was going to do it different next time. And that's when I started really committing to hearing my divine wisdom. So I thought it was intuition that had led me there, but it was mixed up. Some of it was intuition and some of it was ego, right? Or like my brain filling in the gaps. So I spent 3 years before pandemic, 3 years sitting with my soul and understanding how to hear my own truth. I slowed down. I sat still. I stopped consuming everything so I could really, really hear myself. And if it was not a clear yes, it was a no. So that's the first thing. And it was not easy to do. Talk about, Ashlie, you said surrender some strengths, right? It's like, I can hear all the things and put it together and make things happen. And it was like, okay, but I'm clear that's not the way that I'm meant to create right now.
Well, and I'm so present to the courage, because people want to get, you had a very successful business at that point. Mm-hmm. Like deciding to do things differently when things are working at a pretty great level is just really courageous.
Yeah. Because even though I lost 50,000 on the event, my business was still profitable, and like I could afford to do that. So we could start with that, right? It was like, okay, I can do that. Yeah. And what I want people to know too is, so this work of surrendering some of our strengths and stepping into our spiritual advantage. And I see the questions. Thank you for the questions. We'll circle back to that. Well, actually, I'll say now, so someone said, would you speak more about what a spiritual advantage is? And I should have Ashlie share this too, because this was your topic, but it was originally, I was thinking about naming our Source to Magic quiz, your spiritual advantage, because it really is when Source is guiding you, which is how your inner knowing is showing up, when you're following your true inner knowing. You could call it your soul, right? When you're in that place of following your true inner knowing, it's like the threads just work out. Like this happens and that happens and this happens, and it just guides you so beautifully. And I became aware, when you mess with my money, I pay attention. I don't know if anybody else is this way, but I want to bring that in, right? If your money is not working, I highly encourage you to pay attention to your money and let that be a guide, because it's going to guide you about your alignment, right? So for me, that wasn't working because I lost $50,000 on an event. And even though my business was successful and working, and in a lot of ways, people would have looked at that event and said it was like everybody who was there had an amazing time. It was amazing. It was an amazing event. Liz Gilbert did a whole workshop for 50, 60 people. Like it was amazing. And it didn't work, right? And it didn't feel good energetically in my body to lose $50,000, because we're not running a charity. Nobody here is running a charity. It's not going to feel good energetically in your body to have the energy balance be off like that. Right. And so in a lot of ways, it wasn't that big of a deal, but it was a really big deal. And so that's why I did it, Ashlie. And I could have, you're right, I could have skipped over it. I could have just said, we're not doing that event anymore, full speed ahead. But I teach this stuff, right? So I was aware enough that I would just recreate it in some other form if I didn't heal this. Right? Micromanaging the clouds. If the event, like whatever my ego wanted me to do, right, eclipsed the sun to get me to go here to do that, right, I would just do it with a different cloud. It'd be a different way, but the same thing. And so we have to be willing to surrender old ways in order to allow the sourced way to arise.
I think my experience of coming to that way of moving through the world was also at a critical point of relationships falling apart, or a primary relationship falling apart, and a recognition of I don't know where to go or what to do. And I can't rely on what I've relied on before, and feeling so utterly confused and helpless that I did the point of surrender thing. And I had a transformational woman in my life say, encourage me to notice what it felt like in my body when I told the truth. And I was like, I didn't even know what that meant at the time, but I started paying attention, and I recognized there's a distinct way the truth feels, and it's undeniable and it's reliable, and it changed everything for me. It became this barometer and this way that I would, tune in. Before I was even saying tune in, it was like, oh, I can feel that. And so being able to nurture that over time has been really, really helpful. Has it been similar for you, Manda? Was it a critical moment, or how have you been nurturing your?
Oh, yes. I would say for me, the community, the people that I surround myself have been paramount to helping me claim and know and discern my spiritual advantage. Kind of like you, Ashlie, as a primary relationship fellow way, like, when we're expanding who we are, the people in our lives, they may cheer us on and support us, but at some level, they probably have some draw to kind of keeping you the same, because there's, you've been kind of at the same, playing in the same energy. And so when you're in a community like Source, like the Sourced community, it's a whole different ballgame. It's a whole different level of energy that really helps everyone rise. Like, I remember going through the certification program myself as a client. There were times when I had no idea, like I knew what my vision was, but I would fall back into my default energy. But what I experienced over and over again is that the Source
I feel like I could finish that sentence, but I don't.
coach and Darla were able to hold that vision. Oh, I'm back.
We heard that when you would fall into that default, that the Sourced community.
The Source, okay, thank you. The Source community would hold what I wasn't able to hold for myself at that time. And that made all the difference, all the difference.
Oh, Manda, I love that you bring this forward. This is it. Everybody listening, I'm sure, has their own version of having a hard time owning your magic. And one of the things I think I am magical at is holding community. This is actually part of why the event that lost money, why this was so hard for me, because I kept wanting we had cohorts, and I wanted everybody to meet because our community is so amazing, right? And so I'm so happy with Shift the Field Live, how this is happening. But during that time when I had that event, and then I kind of decided, okay, I'm going to do things differently. I was in a community. I've been in a lot of different communities. Community has 100% held me, just like you're saying, Manda. And I've been in communities that are very focused on, sell the thing. It doesn't matter if you're good at delivering it. It doesn't matter if you know what you're selling, just sell it. I've been in communities where there's a lot of someone talked about spiritual advantage in marketing, where there's a lot of marketing, what's the exact words in the subject line to increase your open rate by X%, and very heady, not oh, what are you delivering and what do you believe, but what do you need to say to get someone to click the thing, right? So we can start to think about manipulating the clouds, right? How we get in our head. And now pretty soon we're all having these conversations about beautiful subject lines that don't connect to the heart. And that was a place I was in. Really amazing humans. I met amazing humans, smart marketers. And every time I would go to one of these retreats, at the end, I would feel like I needed a retreat from the retreat to detox from all the head energy. And so as you were talking about, so that was all happening while I was doing this event, and I was thinking, oh, where is a place that can hold me as I surrender some of my strengths and step into my spiritual advantage? Where's the community that can hold me in that? And I could find, places that were very spiritual, but not business oriented. And I could find very business oriented, but not spiritual. And I could find very mindset focused, but not embodied. Right. And so this is what I love. That's a very long story to say. This is what I love about our community and why it feels different. And this is to circle back to the, who am I to hold this? This has happened to me. I hope other people relate to this. I'd love to know if other people relate to this. This has happened to me several times, where I'm looking for the thing, where I'm looking for someone else to create the thing that I see needs to be created. Has anybody been there? Like, oh, I'm just looking, why has no one created? Someone needs to, right? And then it's like, oh, wait, maybe it's me. And that was what was happening for me before I started my business to begin with, was, okay, I'm looking for the organization that I want to work in. And then I'm like, wait, maybe I need to create the organization I want to work in. Does anybody relate to that? Has anybody had those feelings?
I feel like that's your recognition magic at play or something. I'm checking, like, have I had that feeling? I don't know if I've had that feeling, but I think that's, I mean, I'm sure others have. Yeah. Anne's saying yes.
Yeah. I'm wondering if the people listening have had that.
Right.
Yeah, it might be. That's really good, Ashlie. It probably is a recognition magic. So all our recognition magics, type recognition in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Cameron. Okay, Anne has, Cameron has. Awesome.
Yeah. So let me see here. We've covered a lot of ground.
Well, Ashlie, I'm curious. You talked about, I have one thing, but I wanted to ask you about nurturing your spiritual advantage, because you asked us.
Yeah, thank you. Well, yeah, so I shared about like how it came kind of into my field of awareness, but for me over time, that's meant taking moments to pause and check into that was where I first started, right? Just little decisions like, what am I going to wear today? What do I want to eat? Low risk. I can do this kinds of places until I got more and more trust around it. But then as I've gone, I've found that one of the most beneficial ways for me to cultivate that is through deeper embodiment work. So I've become really active in my dance community, movement community. It's a big part of the work I do. It's a part of the way that I work with clients, because there's a way that when I see you move, I can feel things in my body, something I've discovered along the way. And so being in my own embodiment practices, whether they just be like classic mindfulness practices that are, aware of sensation and present to what you're feeling or sensing, or literally becoming more attuned in my body through movement and other yoga, but primarily dance is my personal favorite way to tune in.
I think that just makes me want to invite everybody to take a breath and feel your body. Yeah, several of the magics, work that way, where we feel it in our body. Vibration can be, and sensation, 100%. So if you have a sensation magic, embodied work is really important. And those are a lot of practices that I have implemented, specifically Qigong, in addition to meditation. And what my mentor that I worked with during the time when I was letting things go called it sitting practice, which is literally I don't even call it meditation, because it's really sitting with my soul, sitting with myself. And I'm seeing Cameron's question here that I want to address, which is that I'll share how I use this. So Cameron asks, how do you use this across different aspects? Definitely use it when talking to clients, but struggle using it when working in my business. And I think that's beautiful to highlight, because sometimes it really is easier with our clients. This is why I'm like, get clients, because all of it, if people are kind of on if you're working with clients, you will see it show up. Your client is connected to source, you're connected to source, your relationship is sacred, you have a solid container. At least if you go through our certification, you learn the ways to create that. And so it's going to show up, and then you can learn how it works and then take that into other areas of your life. So it makes perfect sense to me that it's easier there. And as someone who's led, I don't know, almost 100 retreats now, in retreat, it really shows up when you have a group and that collective energy in a firm container. It's like magic. You are magical. You can't even stop yourself, right? People get so afraid of doing it, but that's where you learn how your magic works. But yeah, then I too, Cameron, would bypass it when working on my business. Like I created this event and I'm like, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this. And I forget, wait, I can ask my soul every step of the way. I can, is it this? Is it this? Is it this? Is it this? Now people have different, ways that works. And sometimes we don't get the information. And so like when I said I would sit, and if I didn't get a clear yes, I would do nothing. That was the first step to really, really practice that when working on my business. If I'm not getting a clear yes, do nothing, because I'm increasing my faith muscle. And Source is training me to be attuned to the clear yes. That's how I received it. And so that was hard. I'm a doer, right? That was hard to just wait until the yes was clear. How I use it now is I will do sitting practice. Sometimes, some days I'm just sitting. I'm not trying to get spirit to give me information every day, all the time. Okay. Because it's kind of exhausting, right? That's my ego is saying, I want to keep up this really, really fast pace. Just give me all the things, right? I have to know 6 months out. I have to know how this is going to go. Please give me all the information. And that's not really being in the advantage, because the advantage is in the present moment, right? The advantage is having the sun flowing through you. That's the advantage. We can't have the sun flow through us 6 months from now. Like we can't preemptively say, hey, sun, 6 months from now, I'd like this, right? So there's that surrendering. So some days I sit, some days I scan my body. I have sensation magic. So I'm really educated on the chakras and what the different energies of the chakras represent. So I'll chakra scan my body and see if some part of my body wants my attention. And then I ask what that's about. No agenda. I have no agenda, right? And then I keep a little notebook and I will write source time. And as something comes up that I need to tune into or decide about, or I get an idea that's like, ooh, is that my ego or is that source? I put it on a little piece of paper. And then when I feel the energy of it in my sitting practice, I'll take a notebook and I'll take that little piece of paper and I'll take a big notebook, colored markers. This is how I do it. And I'll just ask the questions and I'll kind of like write them out, really big paper, and I'll ask, what do I need to know about this? And so I'll have this kind of business planning session with my soul. And then I trust it and I act on it. But I would only know that because I've cultivated that relationship to know what a yes and a no looks like, to know what the different sensations in my chakras are saying to me. And that was an investment of time into my ability to hear. And it's paid off over and over. When COVID started, I already knew that I wanted to build a brand called Sourced. And I knew in general what it was about, but I had taken 0 steps. And I was able to rebrand, create new offerings, right? Prior to COVID, I was teaching people how to host profitable retreats. So rebrand, create all new programs and put that out and have it all work, actually, right? With very low stress in the business. I've had a lot of personal stress this year, but in the business, right? Very low stress because I did these sessions with my soul and it was guided. What's coming up for others here? I hope that is helpful. That's just my way, right? Everybody has to find your own way, really.
Yeah, I want to point out, because what's really present for me as you're saying that, Darla, is I feel like that is a lot of the work that we do with private clients. Like, I know the clients that I work with, clients that Manda works with, like holding the space so you can discover how your magic works through you. And I find myself asking clients often, what do you know about the conditions that need to be present? Because it's one of the things you can start to pay attention to. It's like, what's the environment like, or what conditions are most conducive to your magic coming through? Because then you can sort of structure that or help set that up at least. And so in working with clients, there's a lot of, okay, well, let's tune in. You know, what does your yes feel like? What is your no? Or just holding the space while they inquire and discover. And I think that's part of what Darla's pointing to is, you know, she invested in that with her time and her energy, and probably had a coach holding her as she discovered some of that, to where now she's more reliable to sit on her own and have that come through. But that's a lot of work paying off.
I wouldn't have done it on my own. My ego would have taken over. Because here's what's happening. I want to go back to what Ashlie said about surrendering some strengths, right? So the things that we have reliably leaned on to create success, some of them have to fall away. And some of them have to just get purified, right? Like I think about the recognition magic that we talked about. It's seeing these patterns and trends, seeing signs, getting clicks. That can create a lot of distraction unless we purify it, where it's like, oh, that's really how it works. And so we have to be willing to let things go. And I don't care how far along you are in your journey of transformation, how many shifts you've made, the next level, it's always going to require letting something die. By the way, we're going to talk about this. There's a whole segment on this in Shift the Field Live. It's going to require letting something die. And letting something die is freaking terrifying. And so having a person who can say, yeah, it's clear. You sound clear. Everything in my body feels clear in response to your knowing, right? So I've honed my magic, so I'm not like bringing my own ego to it as the coach, right? I'm able to hold it and give you clear responses of like, oh yeah, that feels true, right? Because when you're like, oh, I think this is true, but the implications of that mean I have to let go of someone in my life. I have to raise my prices. I have to add this program that I feel like really nervous. Can I actually hold it? Like all of those changes are scary. And so having a clear person who's holding a container is huge. And the community that's being held. Manda. I just want to see I'm present to our time. So I'm going to stop.
Yeah. Yes to everything you're saying. The people that we surround ourselves and invite intentionally into our lives to hold us as we are moving through these, as we are surrendering, it makes all the difference. Yeah. And who you surround yourself with, the source community, like I've been in a number of communities like you, Darla and Ashlie, and those watching, and some of them probably resonate more clearly with you than others. And I have to say, the source community seems like it's at the crest of the way that we are going, the way that ultimately is going to be the most beneficial and healing and impactful for the greater collective, for the greater good.
That delights me. Spiritual advantage, another name for sourced magic. The reason I didn't call it spiritual advantage, even though that was close, is we all have it. We all have the ability to hone it. But if you do hone it, it will be an advantage for you. And what Manda said, this is the crest of the way we're going. I feel that so deeply in my soul. Like, I have no doubt about that. I see us being out there in the world where someone sees you and like, we have sourced shirts, right? And it's like, oh, I get you. I can trust you that you are coming from your truth. And I can trust that, and I can relax into that because you're sourced, I'm sourced. Even we're all human. We all mess up. We get out of alignment. Things happen. But it's like a foundational commitment to operating in a certain way that just is workable. And I see, as more and more structures in our world fall away, which is going to happen in the coming years, those who are so grounded in truth, we won't know. We're not trying to micromanage like, ooh, I'm going to position myself to be at the greatest advantage when the world falls apart. It's not like that. It's just naturally we're going to be pulled into more leadership positions of the new, as Eckhart Tolle says, the new earth, right? That's what I see. Thanks for that, Manda.
So as we wrap up, I would love to share with people 2 different ways you could be held if it so interests you. Is there, Darla, if there's anything else you would like to put in, or Manda, please feel free. But I want you guys to know, we've mentioned Shift the Field. It's happening February 17th, 18th, and 19th. If you are not already registered for this, it's an absolute, I just keep saying, it's like a no-brainer. You want to spend 3 days in this container being held and supported and nurturing your sourced leadership. So if you're not registered for that, jump in. It starts when you say yes. So come play with us. And then the second invitation I want to extend is, if you want to look at your spiritual advantage and how it's playing into your life and your business right now, and you want the support and the holding of a sourced leader, you have the opportunity to get a one-on-one session with Manda, and we'll put the link in the comments below. So, it's also just a total no-brainer. So for a mere $44, you can step into this potent holding with Manda and explore, where's your spiritual advantage showing up? Where are you leveraging it? Where are you not? And so I highly encourage you to take advantage of that as well. And both is a potent combination, right? Maybe meet with Manda and come into the container. Beautiful, beautiful way to support yourself. All right. Anything else you guys like to add before we complete? I so appreciate you coming and being in this conversation with me here today.
Thanks for holding this space for us, Ashlie, and super fun. I'm just more and more excited about the event based on this conversation. Yeah. And that's how Source works, right? Yeah. We're getting a little more and a little more and a little more.
That's right.
The energy is stirring and opening, and we would love to have you join us, Shift the Field Live. And I welcome anyone who wants to step into some time with me for a strategy session.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. All right, you guys, we'll see you next time.